My mom didn't call. She didn't even hesitate. She just texted me, "Please don't come. The family wants a drama-free wedding." A second later, my sister Morgan liked it, like my absence was some kind of gift to everyone. I stared at the screen, feeling the quiet snap inside me. The kind you don't hear, but you never forget. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't type a second response. I didn't call my father to beg for mediation. I didn't throw my phone across the room. Emotion is just bad data in a crisis, and I had no intention of letting it corrupt my decision-making. I walked into my home office, the one paid for by my own firm, not family money, and opened my laptop. The screen hummed to life, and I navigated straight to the master dashboard for the Lake Tahoe property. It wasn't just a house. It was a fully integrated smart system I had designed from the ground up. To them, it was the family lake house, a magical place that maintained itself. To me, it was asset number 4, a property I had rescued, renovated, and now, apparently, was being banned from. I pulled up the exterior security feed. The resolution was crisp enough to see the smugness on Morgan's face as she posed by the front entrance for a selfie. My mother, Nicole, was already directing the movers with that frantic, high-pitched authority she reserved for people she considered beneath her. They looked so comfortable, so entitled. They were treating my property like their kingdom, convinced that the gates opened simply because they were royal. They were about to learn that the gates only opened because I paid the electric bill. I accessed the User Permissions tab. My mother's profile, Guest Admin. Morgan's profile, Guest Admin. Richard's profile, Guest. I selected all 3, Revoke Access. On the screen, I watched the immediate effect. My father tried to key in the code to the main foyer. Nothing. He tried again, harder this time, jamming his finger against the pad. I saw him turn to my mother, his mouth moving in a shape I recognized. Frustration. But I wasn't done. A venue is more than just unlocked doors. It's an ecosystem, and I controlled the weather. I navigated to the environmental controls. The current internal temperature was set to a perfect 72 degrees, pre-cooled for their arrival. I switched the mode from comfort to eco-preservation. The system immediately shut down the AC and locked the thermostats. In the middle of a July heat wave, the glass-walled living room would turn into a terrarium within the hour. Next came the vendors. I opened a new tab. The catering contract, the floral arrangements, the live band, every single one was signed by me, using my credit lines. To the vendors, I wasn't the bride's sister. I was the client. I drafted a single, templated email and BCC'd the entire list. Due to unforeseen circumstances regarding site access and client conduct, the event scheduled for this weekend at the Tahoe property is indefinitely suspended. Please process cancellations per the terms of our agreement. Do not attempt to access the property. Security codes have been cycled. Send. I leaned back in my chair, watching the feed. My mother was now on her phone, pacing the driveway. Morgan was kicking the front tire of the rental SUV. They looked small on the screen, pixels in a frame I controlled. They wanted a drama-free wedding? I could give them that. A wedding with no food, no music, no air conditioning, and no venue is certainly free of drama. It's free of everything. I closed the laptop. The fan whirred into silence. It was the quietest sound I had ever heard. I sat there in the silence of my office, the glow of the monitor fading, and let myself look at the numbers one last time. People ask why I let it go this far, why I let them treat me like an ATM with a pulse for so long. The answer wasn't simple kindness. It was accounting. I opened the spreadsheet file named Tahoe Renovation. The final sum at the bottom of column G was $284,312.40. That wasn't family money, that was my money. When I bought the property 5 years ago, it was a distressed asset, a rotting A-frame, with good bones and a bad roof. Morgan didn't want it then. She called it a dump. But 6 months ago, when she got engaged, she suddenly had a vision. She wanted a Vogue-level wedding venue, something rustic but expensive, isolated but hyper-connected. She wanted a Nancy Meyers movie set, and she wanted it for free. I gave it to her. I didn't just write a check. I managed the entire project. I imported the limestone for the patio because Morgan said the local slate was too gray. I installed the floor-to-ceiling smart glass because Nicole, my mother, complained about drafts. I paid for the mature cedar trees to be trucked in and planted along the perimeter because Richard, my father, wanted privacy from the road. I paid the contractors. I paid the designers. I paid the rush fees when Morgan changed her mind about the cabinet hardware 3 weeks before completion. I built them a palace on the edge of the water. And I did it without asking for a dime. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I was being a doormat. You're thinking I was weak. But in economics, there is a concept called the sunk cost fallacy. It's the phenomenon where you continue a behavior or endeavor as a result of previously invested resources. You convince yourself that you can't walk away because you've already paid too much to quit. You tell yourself that the payoff is just around the corner. That's what I was doing with my family. I wasn't just renovating a house, I was trying to purchase a seat at their table. I thought that if I made myself indispensable, if I became the architect of their perfect lives, they would finally have to see me. I thought affection was a transaction I could win if I just had enough capital. I believed that if I invested enough labor, enough money, enough excellence, the return on investment would eventually be love. I was wrong. The market had crashed years ago, and I was the only one still buying shares. To them, I wasn't a sister or a daughter, I was infrastructure. I was the unseen wallet that made the magic happen. You don't thank the foundation of a house for holding up the walls, you just expect it to be there. And when the foundation cracks, you don't comfort it. You complain that the floor is uneven. My mother's text wasn't just an insult, it was a quarterly report. It told me that my investment was worthless. I didn't fit the aesthetic, because utility isn't supposed to be seen. The help isn't supposed to be in the wedding photos. I closed the spreadsheet. I didn't save the changes. There was no point in tracking a bad debt anymore. I had spent nearly $300,000 trying to buy a family that didn't exist. It was a total loss. And like any good investor, I knew there was only one thing left to do when an asset becomes a liability. You liquidate it. Back in the present, the digital temperature gauge on my laptop screen read 84 degrees. On the security feed, the Vogue aesthetic was melting. My mother was fanning herself with a printed itinerary, her perfectly blown-out hair starting to frizz in the stagnant lake air. Richard was red-faced, shouting at a keypad that had been deactivated 10 minutes ago. Morgan was sitting on her vintage Louis Vuitton trunk, crying. Not the silent, tragic weeping of a bride in distress, but the loud, performative sobbing of a toddler who dropped her ice cream. My phone, which I had set to Do Not Disturb for everyone else, lit up. It was Nicole. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back through my computer speakers. Grace, pick up the phone right now. This is ridiculous. The code isn't working, the air is off, and the caterers just called to say there was a cancellation error. You need to fix this immediately. We have guests arriving in 2 hours for the welcome drinks, and the house is a sauna. You are ruining the vibe, Grace. Do you hear me? Fix it. Ruining the vibe. Not we missed you, not we're sorry. Just a maintenance request delivered with a scream. Then came the notification from Instagram. Morgan had posted a story. I clicked it. It was a video of her, filtered to look dewy and tragic, standing in front of my locked front door. Guys, literally the worst start to the wedding weekend, she said to her camera, pouting. The venue coordinator is ghosting us. And the property is totally unprepped. It's like 0 out of 5 stars. If you're a vendor in Tahoe who can save the day, DM me. Number wedding disaster, number incompetence. She didn't tag me. She didn't name me. To her followers, I was just the venue coordinator. I was nameless staff who had failed to turn down the sheets. I watched Richard walk away from the door and pull out his phone. A second later, my screen buzzed. We need to talk. His text read. Stop playing games. You're being hysterical over a simple misunderstanding. Open the house. I typed back a single sentence. I'm not coming, and neither are you. His response was immediate. The phone rang. I answered, putting it on speaker so I could watch his face on the monitor while I listened to his voice. Grace, he barked, trying to sound authoritative. Enough. You've made your point, you're hurt. We get it. But this is your sister's wedding. You don't get to lock us out of the family home just because you're throwing a tantrum. The family home? I asked, my voice flat. Yes, the family home. Grandma Rose left this place for all of us to enjoy. You might handle the bills, but this house belongs to the family. You have no right to keep us out. Now open the gate, or I'm going to break a window. There it was. The entitlement. The rewritten history. They truly believed that because they existed, they owned what I had built. They believed Grandma Rose had left them a legacy, when in reality, she had left them nothing but the opportunity to fail. You're going to break a window? I asked. If I have to, he threatened. Okay, I said. Go ahead. I hung up. On the screen, I saw him grab a landscaping rock from the garden border, a border I had designed. He marched toward the floor-to-ceiling glass of the main living area. He thought he was breaking into his inheritance. He had no idea he was breaking into a crime scene. I didn't scream. I didn't activate the two-way audio to beg him to stop. I watched my father wind up his arm, ready to smash a $2,000 pane of double-paned thermal glass, and I calmly picked up my phone. I didn't call a mediator. I dialed the direct line for the Washoe County Sheriff's Department. Dispatch, this is Grace Henderson. I am the sole property owner of 442 Lakeview Drive. I have visual confirmation of 3 individuals attempting forced entry and vandalizing the premises. I would like to request an immediate patrol unit for a trespassing in progress. Yes, I have video evidence. I'm sending the digital deed and my identification to the deputy's file right now. I hung up and opened my email. This was the moment the genre of our story changed. We weren't in a family drama anymore, we were in a legal procedural. And the evidence I was about to upload wasn't just a deed. It was the autopsy report of their financial integrity. You see, Richard and Nicole love to talk about the family trust. They throw the phrase around like a royal title. The trust will pay for college. The trust owns the lake house. The trust is our legacy. But here is the twist they never told Morgan. Here is the secret I've kept locked in a safe deposit box for 5 years. There is no trust. In 2018, the Henderson Family Trust didn't just run out of money, it imploded. My father had leveraged the assets to cover bad angel investments in tech startups that never launched. My mother had drained the liquidity to maintain a country club lifestyle on a bankruptcy budget. They had bled Grandma Rose's legacy dry until the only thing left in the account was an overdraft fee. The bank sent the foreclosure notice for the Tahoe house in November of that year. I was the one who found it, buried under a stack of unopened mail on my parents' kitchen counter. They were going to lose the only thing Grandma Rose had ever truly loved. I went to Grandma Rose. She was devastated, but she was sharp. She knew that if she bailed them out again, they would just remortgage the house 6 months later. So we made a deal. A business deal. I liquidated my own portfolio money I had saved from my first 3 years of grinding 80-hour weeks in commercial design. I paid off the arrears, I paid off the liens. And then, I bought the house from the trust for fair market value, effectively clearing their debts. But there was a condition. Grandma Rose insisted that the deed be transferred solely to me. Fee simple absolute. No parents, no Morgan. Just Grace. We agreed to let my parents pretend. We let them tell Morgan and their friends that the house was still in the family because humiliating them would have broken the family apart back then. I allowed them to play Lord and Lady of the Manor for 5 years, as long as they paid the utilities. They didn't even do that. I paid those too. So when Richard stood there, with a rock in his hand, screaming about his inheritance, he wasn't fighting for his property. He was attempting to break into a house he had forfeited half a decade ago due to gross incompetence. He was a squatter with a delusion of ownership. I attached the PDF file, labeled Recorded Deed, 2018. It was a beautiful document. It had the county seal, the notary stamp, and my signature in blue ink. It was the ultimate receipt. I hit send. On the security feed, Richard hesitated. His arm lowered slightly. He looked over his shoulder, perhaps sensing the shift in the atmosphere, or maybe just realizing that breaking a window wouldn't turn the air conditioning back on. He didn't know it yet, but the flashing lights were already turning down the main road. He thought he was teaching his daughter a lesson about respect. In reality, he was about to get a very public lesson in property law. The rock dropped from his hand and rolled onto the limestone patio. He turned to my mother. Probably to complain about my stubbornness. He had about 4 minutes of freedom left. The flashing blue lights hit the cedar siding first, washing out the warm, amber landscape lighting I had spent 3 weeks calibrating. It was the antithesis of the Vogue aesthetic. It was a crime scene aesthetic. On the security feed, I saw the sheriff's cruiser roll up the long driveway, crunching over the gravel. The deputy stepped out, adjusting his belt. He wasn't a wedding guest, he was the reality check. Richard dropped the rock. He walked toward the officer, puffing up his chest, putting on his "I pay taxes" voice. I could see his mouth moving, the aggressive gestures. He was explaining that this was a misunderstanding, that he was the patriarch, that the house belonged to the family trust. The deputy didn't argue, he just looked at his tablet, where I had already uploaded the deed, and then back at my father. He shook his head, then he pointed to his watch. I couldn't hear the words through the camera, but the body language was universal. "You have 10 minutes. That was the moment the power flipped. The entitlement evaporated, replaced by raw, frantic panic. Morgan stopped crying and started throwing suitcases into the trunk. Richard slumped against the hood of the rental car, deflated. And then, my phone rang. FaceTime. It was my mother. I answered. I wanted to see it. "Grace!" Her face filled the screen, blotchy and terrified. The background was a blur of blue strobe lights. "Please. You have to stop this. The police are here. They're kicking us out. You can't do this to your sister. Think of the optics. Think of what people will say." "I am thinking of the optics," I said calmly. "It looks like you're trespassing." "We're family!" she screamed, the facade of the elegant matriarch completely gone. "You are being cruel. You are being a monster." "A monster?" I repeated. I looked at her, really looked at her. For 29 years, I had been the good daughter. The fixer. The wallet. And they had treated me like furniture. Now, for the first time, I was saying no, and suddenly, I was the villain. And in that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. If protecting my financial future makes me a monster, then I will be a monster. If refusing to be exploited makes me the villain in their story, then I will gladly wear the black hat. It fits better than the halo of a martyr ever did. A villain is just a character who has boundaries that the hero refuses to respect. I accept that, I told her. I'm the villain. And the villain is evicting you. You have 8 minutes left. I hung up. I watched them scramble. It was chaotic and undignified. They shoved the welcome sign into the back seat. They threw the custom gift bags onto the gravel. As they peeled out of the driveway, tail lights disappearing into the dark, I didn't feel guilty. I felt like I had finally cleaned house. The wedding happened. But it wasn't in vogue. I heard the details later from Grandma Rose, who attended out of sheer, morbid curiosity. Apparently, with no venue, no caterers, and their credit cards maxed out from the wedding week expenditures I had refused to reimburse, my parents had to scramble. They found the only space available on short notice during peak season, the conference room of a roadside motel off the highway. There were no floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. There was beige carpet that smelled like stale coffee and fluorescent lighting that hummed. The aesthetic was desperation. Morgan got married in front of a pulled-down projector screen while the sound of semi-trucks rumbled past on the interstate. I wasn't there to see it. I was in my apartment, sitting on my own balcony, drinking wine that cost less than the bottle I had uncorked for them, but tasted infinitely better because I had bought it for myself. My phone rang around 10 p.m. It was Grandma Rose. "You missed a spectacle," she said, her voice crackling with that dry humor that had always been my lifeline. "Your mother tried to drape tulle over the vending machine. It didn't work." I laughed. It was a genuine sound, unburdened by the usual anxiety of trying to fix things. "Do you think I was too hard on them?" I asked. The question had been lingering at the back of my mind, the last ghost of my old programming. Grandma Rose paused. I could hear the clink of her teacup. "Grace," she said, her tone shifting from gossip to iron. You are an architect. You know how this works. A house with a rotten foundation will always collapse, no matter how much gold paint you put on the walls. You didn't break this family, honey. You just stopped holding up the roof. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle into the architecture of my new life. She was right. I hadn't destroyed anything that wasn't already structurally unsound. I had simply stepped out of the way of the falling debris. The next morning, I listed the Lake Tahoe property. I didn't keep it as a trophy. I didn't keep it out of spite. To me, it was just a building filled with ghosts and bad wiring. I sold it to a tech CEO from Silicon Valley for a 40% profit over my initial investment. I took that money, my capital, my equity, my blood, sweat, and tears, and I didn't put it into a trust. I didn't give it to my parents to pay off their new debts. I started Grace Henderson Design. My own firm, my own name on the door, no silent partners, no invisible investors. I hire my own contractors now, and I pay them on time. I build spaces for people who understand the value of the foundation, not just the facade. My mother still tells people I stole the family home. Morgan still posts vague quotes about betrayal and karma, but they do it from a rented condo across town. And I don't see it because they are blocked on every platform. I learned the most important lesson of renovation that weekend. You can't fix a structure that refuses to be stable. Sometimes, the only way to build something beautiful is to bulldoze the lot and start over. If you've ever had to become the villain to save your own sanity, share your story in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power.